Hey guys, my name is Haley, and I'm here to film a very impromptu, vlog slash book review, which I never do, of Allie's book. We have reached the end of our show. I think this video is going to go up quite a bit before her book comes out, so I will leave a pre order link in the comments down below as well. I got the arc of it through Wildling Press, which I'm very thankful for, and I will say that all of my opinions are my own. I know a lot of people are very weirded out by arc reviews before they come out and don't know whether or not to trust them. There was no consequence in case I didn't like the book, but I loved it. This is like a very niche thing that I really enjoy that you've seen me read about many times on this channel, like apocalypse, radio, theater, road trip, which I didn't realize was going to be the entirety of this, but also I have a lot to say about it. So I wanted to film a whole video. I'm going to do this first part spoiler free in case you don't want to know anything about the book besides like what it says on the back. And then towards the end, I'm going to put not like actual spoilers, but just like commentary on a lot of the characters. I'll probably post another video like this closer to the release date, but yeah. Ali is also doing a book launch in LA. If you live anywhere near LA, I now in my new place have moved a lot closer. I'm about 4 or 5 hours outside of LA now, and I might try to make it to her book launch, which is on September 30th. I will leave all of the information for Wildling and for her book launch and everything in the description down below. But yeah, I'm going to chat about this book because I loved it, and it's very possibly might be on my favorite books of the year. So, Allie, if you're watching this, buckle up. I'm very excited. I'm going to start this off and say that I realize this might I'm going to put this down before I drop it. This might come off as sort of biased, and I was concerned that it would because I am a huge Star Kid fan. If you did not know, Allie is a member of Team Star Kid. She does shows with them every so often. I believe she also just moved from New York to LA with her partner, and I've been a very big fan of hers. I also really liked World's Worst Musical, which is something that Star Kid was a part of back in the day. I was a huge fan of that, so I don't know. Allie was also in that, and I'm very excited that a member of a theater troupe that I've loved for so long has finally written a book. I've been saying that Nick Lang should get his books and like stories published in some way, whether that's just like screenplays or whatever. I will find a way to make that happen. Nick Lang, if you ever see this video, because I would love it in bookish form as an avid reader myself. Not that I don't think it's perfect in its theater form, but anyway, I'm a big fan of Star Kid and Allie, so I was very excited. That is why I jumped on the opportunity to get a arc, and the people I've talked to through Wildling have been so nice and so helpful, so I'm very thankful for that as well, because this is not my first time getting an arc, and a lot of the time they're kind of chaotic. So I do appreciate the team at Wildling Press for presenting me with this opportunity. But yeah, this is a story about a character named Gabe who has, you learn very quickly, I believe it's even on the back of the book, who has cancer. And it is told in a back and forth between the past and the present of who he was and what he did before and how he met his partner Josie. And then also you get flashbacks of Josie's past. And it all takes place very quickly and early on in the book that there is an impending apocalypse. It does actually say what the apocalypse is, which a lot of like I feel like post-apocalyptic or like pre-apocalyptic things don't do. A lot of the time there's no explanation for what the apocalypse is, which I really liked because I've read quite a few of those. This one reminded me a lot of, oh my gosh, what was it called? Life as We Knew It. I'll put up a picture of it if I can find one. I read this series forever ago. It was about the moon and if the moon crashed into Earth and how it would mess up the tides and like the Earth's pull and everything. It was so fascinating. This reminded me a lot of that in a very scientific way of how this was like apocalypse was going to happen. And I really enjoyed that. I also really loved just our cast of characters. We have Gabe, who obviously is dealing with this chronic like illness and this impending problem that he is very likely going to pass away. And then we have Josie, who has his own backstory, which I don't want to spoil it in this section because you might not expect it. I definitely wasn't expecting it. It's not advertised on the back of the book, but I will say it has to do with religious trauma. And as if you've been around my channel for any length of time, you know religious trauma is my like favorite thing to read about, and I've started to post about my own. So I felt that very relatable. And then our third character, Lisi, which I asked Alika how to pronounce that, is very fascinating because she is like chaos personified, which I both really liked and really hated because she is like the most flawed character of the three of them, and I found her fascinating. But yes, it's these three people dealing with an apocalypse on top of their friend being very sick, and I believe it's a countdown of like 25 days before the end of the world, and then how everybody is coping with that on top of the illness that their friend is having and having to deal with that. I will say a huge part of this book is also a road trip. They drive from New York City out to California. And I'm going to say, as someone who just did that entire road trip, we drove from Ohio up to Michigan and all the way down to Vegas. It was fascinating that I knew a lot of the stops and a lot of the places that they were talking about because I've been through them. As my partner and I were also long distance for a long time before we moved in together, and I have done the road trip back and forth between Ohio and Colorado several times, so I'm very familiar with a lot of that terrain, and even more familiar with the more southern part going towards like Vegas and California now, having done that part of the road trip, especially having gone from here to LA where it's like endless desert a lot of the time. So I found it very fascinating that I could relate to it in so many factors. But yes, I gave this 5 stars. If you don't want to know anything else about the story, this is probably your time to leave. I just yelled for 7 minutes about this. But yeah, I'm going to get into a couple of like, I wouldn't consider them spoilers, but for anybody who hasn't read the book and just wants to jump in with like road trip pre-apocalypse member of Star Kid, please do. Pre-order link is in the comments down below. I love the cover of this, and I hope that you enjoy the story. And I hope that more people read it when it comes out on September 30th. But yeah, I took a couple of notes while I was reading it. I will also say this book is only like 160 pages long, so it is the perfect length to binge. Like, I literally just sat down and was like, I'm going to start Allie's book, and read the whole thing in like an hour and a half or so. I will say I am a fast reader, so you may not read it that fast, but it was very, very addictive as well. And yeah, I'm going to jump into a few of my notes and try to make sense of them. I have church trauma from Josie's Mennonite past. I do know what I meant by this because we get like snippets of flashbacks a lot in between the current day chapters of the countdown of 25 days until the end of the world. And a lot of those are of like Josie, who is the love interest of our main character. His full name is Josiah, and it is like very hinted at the very beginning that he used to be a part of the Mennonite community, which, if you didn't know, is part of, I believe it's an offshoot or denomination of Amish. As someone who was born and raised in Ohio, I'm very familiar with the Amish and the Mennonite community because they are mostly clustered in Ohio and Pennsylvania. So I found that part of his story very interesting, but also just from a religious trauma perspective of like growing up in purity culture and growing up in a space where being queer is not accepted, and the idea of wanting to run off to some big city and like get away from all of it, that was all very relatable to me as somebody who also not only grew up in the small town in Ohio but also has always wanted to move to more like queer friendly spaces. In this case, he moves to New York City, which is where he meets our main character Gabe, who is working in the theater and dance scene there. This is a slight spoiler, so if you would like to mute until I put my hand down, please do. There is a portion here where they talk about sexual assault. I am not going to say who or what or how, but it is to do with Josie's story. And as someone who also came out of these religious, like high control religion spaces, that is such a big issue, and I'm so glad that Allie talked about it through Josie's character, and I think it's very important. I also really liked how she really dove into the concept that it's really, really hard to leave a high control religion space like that. As someone who lost everyone that I had spoken to and been friends with for 8 years when I left mine. Quick backstory, if you are not familiar with my channel and this is like the first video that you're seeing, I left a religious cult. I joined it when I was 19, I left when I was 27. COVID got me out of it, and as well as everybody's reaction to the first Trump administration. And I had been having issues with it for years at that point when it came to like how they treated women and how dating was really, really weird in the purity culture, like circles and all of that. So that is my part of the story, that I'm very familiar with these high religion control groups, even if it's not Mennonite specifically, that a lot of it was still very familiar and very relatable to me. So yeah, I really enjoyed Josie's character. I really enjoyed the way that all of his trauma was handled. I really enjoyed seeing how a lot of it affected his relationship with Gabe, especially early on. But I also really liked the somewhat like good representation of being raised in that sort of community where you are taught to care for others, especially if you are part of a community that is like also having been the person to help like raise your siblings and stuff like that. You are taught a lot of things like about caring for others, and that was very helpful with his partner's diagnosis that came along later on. Lisey in particular was a very interesting character to me because she is very like notoriously implied that she's very unreliable. She comes from money. She's been like in and out of a lot of different spaces and a little like seems very like ADHD and like short attention span and like just wants to like do whatever. Almost the rebellious child. I also really liked how realistic her reactions to Gabe's diagnosis were as somebody who has never had to deal with that type of thing. I cannot imagine having being put face to face with that. So I felt her reactions, while do seem and like could come off as they're a bad, like she's a bad person, I didn't feel that necessarily, in the sense that that is a very hard thing to deal with and she was seeing it for the first time. I don't know, I just found the complexity of Lisey's character very interesting. The only thing I have to say about her that I did not like is that I didn't understand her motivation for going to Sacramento. And I also know that a lot of this is just people making decisions they wouldn't normally make because it's the end of the world. So she just felt like she had to do something, and that's why her and the boys like leave New York and do this long road trip. But it was fascinating seeing how she interacted with them as somebody who, it is like, at least to me, very obvious that she's used to doing things on her own, minus being financially backed by her parents, that she has a hard time working with others, which I thought brought an interesting dynamic to this, because that is so common for people in the industries that she was in, and so common for people in New York City, of that just like me, like it's, I'm not used to dealing with other people mindset. I found her entire character, and could do a whole character study on Lisey in particular, very fascinating. I also really loved, as somebody who lives in this area now, all of the descriptions about how when they're stopping in Vegas for gas, because it is the only place that has gas for miles, because there's so much desert surrounding it, especially driving into California. As somebody who just did that drive with my partner going to see a musical in LA that was also a Starkid musical, there really is only like 3 places to stop for gas, so it makes the most sense, especially in an apocalyptic situation, to stop in Vegas. It's also very on par for the people of Vegas to not only like the richer side to have abandoned their homes and to go into bunkers, but also to just be out partying for the entire 25 last days of the world. I feel like that would be common in many of like big cities, but especially around here, especially around the strip. Very accurate. I also had a question, jumping back to the religious trauma, because that's where a lot of my comments come from. I'm very curious that since we talk so much about Josie's family and in the flashbacks and such, and the Mennonite community, I'm not sure about Mennonite beliefs specifically, but I know that most Christians, especially in America, believe in a rapture theology as well as like the hell doctrine. So I'm very curious if there was ever a perspective planned or even thought about for Josie's family, and if they like just assumed and were ready for the rapture when this like end of the world was announced via like the TV and the everything before all of that went out. I'm very curious about the religious side to that. I think it would have been fascinating to hear more about it. And if Allie knows, please tell me. And then last, I liked the inclusion that religious trauma never really goes away. It like will continue, especially if you're raised in it, continue to just like affect your life in so many random ways and just pop up out of nowhere. Like how Josie was wondering a lot towards the end, especially of just like what happens after we die? Like, is there a hell? Is there heaven? Have I like messed up? I found all of that questioning when you're faced with your own mortality very interesting from like somebody who came out of the religious circles. I feel like that definitely would come up in these times, which I really liked the inclusion of it. And then also back to what I said at the beginning, I really loved not only the scientific explanation for why the apocalypse was happening, but also I loved the descriptions of the very end and how the sky turns weird colors and how it started to smell like ozone and all of those things. I thought that was a really interesting addition. And I just thought the ending was perfect. I thought the entire last page was perfect for this type of novel. And I wish more like leading up to the apocalypse novels did that and explaining the atmosphere. I feel like Ali did a very, very good job explaining not only how people were reacting, but also the literal atmosphere of the Earth and how the Earth would react, like scientifically, to that type of thing. I thought that was a very good addition. But yeah, I really loved this story. I just put in a pre-order. I don't know if right now, because of where I'm at, I don't know if I don't know if I'm going to make it out to the book signing or author event, book launch. I don't know if they're going to have signed copies there. If they are, I will probably cancel my pre-order, but for now I have it pre-ordered and I know that she also would really like pre-orders. So if you're at all interested, please go pre-order in the link I have down below. I know a lot of us aren't trying to use Amazon, but I know it is in fact the easiest place and easiest way for a lot of people to get books, as well as the most affordable. So if you're able to pre-order, Amazon won't charge you until like right before the book comes out and when it ships. So if you didn't know that about pre-orders, her link is down below. I hope that more of you check this out. I know that a lot of us were tired of post-apocalyptic or like pre-apocalyptic novels before, but I feel like they're making the rounds again, and I feel like a lot of people would really enjoy this, especially that it's a queer story. And I'm very excited to see what else Ali comes up with. And I'm so excited that I liked this as much as that I loved it as much as I did. I gave it 5 stars. I use Bookly mostly, but I also do still have a Goodreads, so my Goodreads is always linked down below. I have to actually go write a review because I just wanted to blurt out all of my thoughts first. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope that you all go pre-order Ali's book, and if you did enjoy it, please leave. Is there a meteor emoji? Please leave the meteor emoji down below. If not, leave me any planet emoji in the comments down below. But I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys next time.